Um, most of the people have joined, so I guess we're ready to start. مرحبا والسلام عليكم. أنا اسمي Amal Kowatli, and I am the Senior Engagement Specialist at Arizona State University. Today's webinar is about scholarship search and application strategies, and it's going to be held in English, but I'm going to repeat this introduction again in Arabic for those to understand. So actually, I'm going to start with the Arabic introduction, and then I'll move into English and we'll transition to there. فالسلام عليكم جميعا. أنا اسمي أمل كواتلي. أنا أخصائية تواصل في جامعة ولاية أريزونا. فمثل ما حكيت هلأ من دقيقة إنه ندوة اليوم حيكون في اللغة الإنجليزية، وفي سببين مقنعين ليش نحن قررنا اليوم إنه نسوي الندوة في اللغة الإنجليزية. من شي شهرين تقريبا قمنا في نفس الندوة في اللغة الإنجليزية، ولكن إجانا كتير طلب من يعني اللي كانوا معنا إنه بيحبوا إنه الندوة يكون في اللغة الإنجليزية. وكمان أنتم هلأ أغلبكم اللي حتقدموا على الفرص المنح الدراسية يطلب منكم اللغة الإنجليزية بطلاقة، فلازم أنتم تعرفوا شو هو المصطلحات الإنجليزية في التقديم للجامعة. طبعا المتحدث معنا اليوم دكتور لويس ياقو هو حيساند كل الأفكار اللي يعني مطروحة في الإنجليزية بالعربي مشان شوي تفهموا وتتعلموا مصطلحات جديدة. وطبعا فقرة الأسئلة وأجوبة في نهاية ندوة اليوم. إذا طرحتوا السؤال في اللغة العربية بيجاوب عليكم الدكتور لويس في اللغة العربية، وإذا طرحتوا السؤال في اللغة الإنجليزية حيجاوبكم في اللغة الإنجليزية. فبتمنى أنه يكون هون نحن فهمنا كيف حندير موضوع ندوة اليوم. وحبلش هلأ أنا طبعا بالتقديم، بس كمان مثل ما خبرتكم في اللغة الإنجليزية. All right, so that was just the introduction in Arabic. So I'll briefly reintroduce everything again in English. So today I'm here with the Ghurair Young Thinkers Program. And with me today is Dr. Louis Yako. He is a success advisor on the Young Thinkers Program. He is also a PhD holder, a writer, and an anthropologist. And within the Young Thinkers Program, he specializes on giving college and career advice for our young thinkers in the MENA region. So I'm sure you've seen him throughout any of our video assets that we display on YouTube and social media, as well as our recent webinars. And today's topic is very requested from all our users on how they can find scholarships in the MENA region and abroad. So Dr. Lewis today, he's excellent. He himself is a scholarship candidate for most of his studies. So he's going to share a lot of his experience. And so hopefully that gives you kind of a competitive edge on the inner secrets of, going about your scholarship application. So Dr. Lewis is going to present his tips and ideas. And then towards the end of the webinar, we're going to have a Q&A session where you will be asked, we request you to ask any questions you have regarding scholarships and applications. If you ask a question in English, we will answer in English. If you ask a question in Arabic, we will answer that in Arabic. So depending on the language of your choice. I hope you guys, have fun with today's webinar and learn. I know I always learn from the amazing Dr. Lewis. But before I hand over the microphone for Dr. Lewis, I just want to launch a quick poll on how you heard about today's webinar. So if you will see a question on your screen. If you can please select how you heard about today's webinar so we can get an idea of where our users are coming from. Okay, I'm going to give that poll 1 extra minute and then I'll close it. So I see a lot of people are coming through email. We have a few coming from a Qasimi Foundation. So it's very nice to meet you all. So I will now be closing the poll. And without further ado, Dr. Lewis, if you can start with your presentation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I am very happy to be here with you today. Very excited to have this wonderful number of attendees. And I hope this will be a wonderful webinar that we will learn a lot of information. And I want you to use chat, but also maybe if you prefer to wait until the question and answer time, we will have time for that as well to ask any questions you have. So welcome everybody. And I would like to start by a few basic things, which is I'm here today to teach you how to do this. A lot of people, most of us wish to get a scholarship. We will, and nobody wouldn't want to get some kind of funding, right? Or free money to do things. But as we know, nobody is going to come and just give us the funding like this. It's not easy. It takes a lot of work and preparation. And to be very honest, the only one who can do this work very well is you. And because I want you to succeed in this, I put this webinar together so that we go through all the details, the ins and outs of what it takes to be prepared and to have a very strong scholarship application. I will also be sharing with you some things related to some of the websites where you can go and search for scholarships. So let me share my screen and begin with you all to do this. Again, welcome everybody. So today our webinar is called Scholarship Search Strategies. I'm gonna teach you really good strategies of how to think, how to search about scholarships. So what we will do exactly, I will talk about types of scholarships and financial aid. A lot of people don't even know there are many different types, and some of them might be really good for you. Not all of them are good for everybody, but to know that is a very good starting point. We will talk about that. We will talk about why timing, the time, when do you apply, how prepared you are, when do you start preparing is really important in this process. I will give you 10 essential tips that are absolutely important if you want to succeed in getting a scholarship. Then I will talk about scholarship components. What are they? What do you need to have in place before you even begin applying for scholarships? And that will include personal or research statement. What is it? What do they mean? I will talk about the required tests, letters of recommendations and references, how to polish your CV resume, how to prepare your interview skills. And also I will talk about your online presence, how to think about that as you apply for scholarships. And then I will end with also some essential important tips for all of you to take home, reflect on, and be ready. It's worth saying that I have 3 master's degrees and a PhD, and I did not pay 1 cent for any of them. From UK to the United States, and all the way when I got my PhD at Duke University, everything was done through scholarships. So I have a lot of experience about how to do this. And of course, as I experienced this, I learned a lot. I've made mistakes and learned a lot, and it was a great learning experience. I've also gotten scholarships while doing my PhD to get summer funding for doing research. So in addition to the big ones, to the like fully funded programs. The point here is that I hope that I will have something meaningful to give you to take home, to think about, and to succeed in your own journey. And each one of you can do this. But the most important thing, before I even begin, you have to sit down with yourself and say, what is my starting point? Where am I in all of this? And where should I start? Each one of you has their own starting point. نقطة البداية تختلف من شخص لآخر. فالسؤال الذكي إنه نحدد أين نحن الآن من هذا. Okay, that's the only way you can start your own path to succeed. Let's begin. We have a lot of work, and I'm excited to be with you here. The most important thing to do is to know that there are different types of scholarships. The reason why this is important, because sometimes you never know what scholarships might be really good for you. So as a first step, I encourage all of you to explore scholarships and aid, financial aid, through that are, for example, for specific populations. I'll give you just examples. There are, for example, scholarships for refugees, scholarship for people with a certain income, or below a certain income. You know, sometimes there are scholarships for certain minorities. These are examples. Students who are excelling in their last year in the engineering school, they will get a scholarship, you know. So they're not always only, you know, there are many different kinds, right? Sometimes there are scholarships that are within the university. So this department has for its students a certain kind of scholarship they can apply to. So it's good to know all this information. That's why the first step to prepare is to think about the different types that you might be eligible to apply to. So because of that, I encourage you all, as a number 2, to utilize scholarship matching tools. There are many tools that can help you look for scholarships. I will give you at the end, like I think there are at the end some websites, but as you see here, in the Arab world, we have Al-Fanar Media. It's a very good tool that can help you look through scholarships available in the Arab world. We have Scholarly and CAPEX, Unigo, and others. Those are more international. You can go to Scholarly, for example, and look at a range of many different available scholarships, for example, in engineering or political science or anything. So these are very good websites, like tools that collect a lot of different resources for you to go through and see. And sometimes you can go directly to the website, wherever they have, and apply. So I encourage you to do that, because knowing what is out there will help you start preparing in the right way. Another thing that we need to know is that it's very good to apply for multiple scholarships and sources of funding. It's always not the best idea to apply to one thing only. For example, in my time, I applied for British Council and Fulbright scholarship. I ended up getting both of them. So that's a good thing, right? But also the first time of Fulbright, I did not get it the first time. I had to refine my application, do a lot of other preparation. There were parts that I was ready in. Some parts were ready, but some things I wasn't ready about. So I had to redo that. But eventually I got both. So it's good to look and cast your net wide and think about different options out there for you, right? And that can help you a lot in maybe if this scholarship doesn't work, then something else will work, right? So be strategic and look at different sources. Don't only apply to one and just sit and hope for the best, right? Look for universities and specific programs who have their own funding, A lot of us are fixated on specific big names for scholarships. I'll give an example. Fulbright is a very prestigious scholarship. It's a very good scholarship, but it's not the only one. For example, there are scholarships that are given by the university itself. For example, the University of Virginia might have scholarships for international students. So try to look at specific programs and universities that may have scholarship. And one way you can do that well, because you'll tell me, there are so many universities, how can I do this? Well, the best way to do that so that you're not overwhelmed is to decide where do you want to study. For example, I decided I want to study at 6 universities. 2 are in the US, 2 are in the UK. I'm going to look at these universities carefully and see what they have for scholarships, right? And maybe the departments, maybe the engineering department or the biology department in this university will have a specific scholarship for international students, or for me, whatever your case is. So be very strategic and look carefully and deeply into what you're doing. That's why planning is extremely important, right? And lastly, on the list of types of scholarships, beware of scholarship and financial aid scams. There are a lot of scams. في كتير حيالين ودجالين that are trying to deceive you, يخدعوكم أنه عندهم scholarship. So be very careful with that. And there are signs. How do you know that? Scholarships will never ask you for money. The website will always look very official. It will have .org, .edu اللي هو website للجامعات, .edu, .org اللي هو organizations that give scholarships, .org, .gov المنح المقدمة من قبل الحكومة, the government scholarships, and others. So look at the website. It has to look legitimate. It has to look very known. Do some research. This is their name. Let me look. Who knows about these people, who have written about them. Do take some time to do some research to make sure you don't get scammed when you are looking for scholarships. So this is really important, and I would hate for any of you to suffer from this, because the whole idea of us wanting to get scholarship because we need support, not need somebody to deceive us and take money from us, and so on and so forth. So moving to the next one. Timing, as I talked about, is extremely important. And honestly, I'll be very honest with you. This might seem very obvious, but many people who would like to get a scholarship, they don't succeed, or they struggle because they don't understand the importance of timing. The earlier you begin, the better. That's the simple rule. And knowing yourself and your needs is extremely important. For example, I want to get a scholarship to study my master's in let's say in 1 year from now, right? But then I realized my English is not very strong. I really need maybe a year and a half to work on my English because my English skills are really, really low. Now, this is important for you to understand and to work with yourself. Every one of you, each one of you here has your own journey, your own strengths, your own weaknesses, your own areas of improvement. So knowing where you are will help the timing. So I will say, okay, this scholarship closes in 3 months and the next round is a year after. Now my English needs at least 8 months. What that means, you might not be ready, and that's okay. It's better to really take the time and get ready. It increases your chance of success than applying randomly, blindly, and quickly without much thinking and planning. This is what I mean by timing. So earlier, it means not earlier applying. Of course, you apply on deadlines to the scholarship. It means the earlier you start preparing your needs, what you need to be prepared to apply for a scholarship to increase your chances of success. Timing applies to multiple components. There are multiple areas in the scholarship process where you need to think about timing. The first one is the actual scholarship that I mentioned. What is the deadline of my scholarships? You want to apply to 7. Look at each deadline. And obviously the earliest deadline will mean that you have to have an application together by then, right? So do that. That's very, very important. It's about timing to request letter of reference. Many scholarships will require letters of reference or recommendation from your previous teachers, professors, رسائل تزكية, رسائل يعني دعم من الأستاذ الجامعي أو إلى آخره. They would want someone to tell them that you are a very good student, a very smart person, you work hard, you're intelligent in this area, and you are worthy of pursuing a master's or a PhD in the area, for example. So get these letters early because people are busy. I know some professors take a month or more to be ready. So you don't go 2 days before the deadline and say, hey, can you send me a letter of recommendation? We need to be thoughtful and respectful of their time and also careful about our timing. Required proficiency and standardized tests. I've seen so many cases where by the time you submit the application, your test is not ready. Your results are not there. And oftentimes, the scholarship reviewers evaluating your application, they would want to see the test already sent to them. For example, I think IELTS and TOEFL, very often they send the test directly to where you want them to send it. So for example, sometimes they send them directly to the Fulbright, not to you, right? It's a personal information and they have a mechanism in place. You want to make sure that you take the TOEFL and the TOEFL gets to the scholarship by the time that the scholarship needs to evaluate it. So you have to do all the math. I'm hoping you're seeing now how timing is critical in all of this, right? Applying to various sources of funding. I already talked about this. This is important, but it also means each source of funding will have its own timing. And therefore you have to be thinking about all these different timings as you do that. I'll move on to the next and keep your questions, either write them in chat or in Q&A. When we have time, I will open it for you to ask questions about the things. Here are 10 essential tips that will help you start preparing smartly and wisely for scholarships. Think big, big picture. Think small. What exactly do I want? So it's not enough to say, I want to study electrical engineering. It's not enough to say, oh, I want to study international relations. What exactly, what questions I'm interested, right? And then think outside of the box. So there are 3 things: think big, think small, and think outside of the box. Think big. What do you want to become and why? And why you are the good person to become. You will need these answers for yourself, maybe for the interview, and maybe and definitely for the personal statement or the research statement that you're going to write later. We're going to talk about it later. But think big, think small. They don't want you just to say, oh, I want international relations. That's not enough. What is your question? Which area you're interested in? Why this question is important? The what, the why, and the so what. So this is important, but so what? Why? Explain to me. And outside of the box, don't do what everybody is doing and saying, because if you do that, then nothing is special about you. If I go through the process using the same words, the same way of everybody else, then nothing is special about me. So you have to find your specific personality, specific way, touch, voice, add it, and use it everywhere in the interview, in the personal statement, and so on. Pay attention to the smallest details. There are many details there, but if they tell you, and we will talk about this more, but if they tell you the deadline is this, pay attention to that. If they tell you they want you to write a statement of 1,500 words, do not write a statement that's 1,600 words. You need to show them you can do this well. It's okay to write 1,450. That shows you said what you wanted in shorter time, but not more. Okay, so that's another thing. All the details matter. We're going to talk a bit more about areas where details matter, as you will see later. Demonstrate your writing and interviewing and communication skills. You will need to make sure your writing skills and your interviewing and communication are all good, because you're going to need them all. You're going to need them when you write the application, write the personal statement, right? You're going to need that, and we will talk more about that. You will be invited mostly for an interview. Nowadays, a lot of interviews are happening virtually, which means you have to have a lot of good skills so that on Zoom, like on a video, you can be convincing, you can be engaging, you can be very interesting person. They connect with you, they see your value, right? So make sure you have that. And of course, communication. By that, I mean, when you write, when you speak, but even when you write an email, sometimes it all shows what kind of personality you have, how you communicate and explain things, right? Make sure you explain things well and clearly. Complete optional fields will make you stand out. Many scholarship applications, by the way, they have fields, optional fields. They say you don't have to fill this option, this field. There are required and optional. Now, if you complete the optional, it will show you have taken a step further, and they will admire that. And of course, if you complete them nicely and do a good job of it, not just complete it quickly without any thought, that shows that you're committed and you will stand out, because many people will not fill out the optional fields. I'm telling you here. So it will make you special, stand out. Consider the preparation time for standardized tests. I talked about this. Know yourself. If I know my English needs another year or year and a half, I'm going to work on that as early as I can, so that I'm ready for the timing that I want to apply and get a scholarship, right? So there's that. Number 6, pay attention to scholarship versus program requirements. This is a very important one. Scholarship has its own requirements. They want this and this from you. Sometimes the program, so I want a scholarship to study sociology in this university. The sociology department in this university might have different requirements that I also need to meet. So when you get accepted into a program, you might want to consider the requirements of the program where you're studying, not only the scholarship. So take into account both of these, right? Read the fine lines of your scholarship financial requirements. And simply, every scholarship will give you money, but they'll have requirements like, we need this and this from you. For example, the Fulbright wants you to go back to your country once you finish. Go back to your country and work in an area to show that you are sharing the knowledge you learned in your own place, in your own country. That's a requirement. Make sure you pay attention to that. Some scholarship, another example, they will tell you that you can only accept our scholarship. You cannot accept another scholarship. Sometimes they give you really good funding and they don't allow you to take funding from someone else. That's another requirement. And there are different ones. Some will say, if you have another scholarship, you have to let us know, so we will give you only 50% of the scholarship, because that other funding will cover the rest. There are very different requirements, a lot of them financial. Make sure you pay attention to those, because they matter. And if you don't follow them and they find out, sometimes they stop and cut the scholarship. There are cases that I know, they even ask you to return the money. You don't want to be in that situation. It is simple to read and know the requirements and follow them. Look for alternative ways to fund your education. There are many ways to do that, including sometimes working on campus, working for certain professors. So even if you don't have enough money and enough funding, once you get in a program, there are other ways. Some universities have summer scholarships, research little stipends for their own students, right? So make sure to look for all kinds of different fundings when your scholarship is not enough, or it's a very small amount and you will need to cover more. Some universities will ask you to do certain work and they cover your tuition, and then you only have living expenses. So there are a lot of different situations. I would encourage you to look at those so that you minimize your spending and get as much benefit financially as possible. Align your work experience with your studies. I think this is clear to all of you, and I'm sure most of you know this, you've thought about this. Make sure whatever you do for work, if you're supplementing your studies, working to get money to pay for your studies sometimes, make sure that work is meaningful and related in some ways to your career planning, your future, and what you want to do in life. That's a very important thing to do. I encourage you to always think about that. Sometimes it's not possible, but if it gives you the money to continue studying, then that's also fine. Lastly, but not least, of course, network. Make sure to build very good connections with graduate students, other international students, the professors in your department. And by the way, I have to say this is really important. When you get into a master's and a PhD program, one of the key steps you must do is build a good relationship with the professors that you like and you want to work with, because they need to know who you are, what you have to offer, what are your research interests, because if they don't, they will not embrace you. And professors can really give you a lot of help. They can accept you into the program. They can find sources of funding for you. They can protect you literally to stay in a program. So networking in this particular capacity is extremely important. But of course, with other people, you learn a lot from international students. You learn a lot from everybody. So this is extremely crucial. So we're gonna next moving to the components. What do you need to prepare for your scholarship? What are the areas, as I said in the introduction? The personal research statement. This is the most important part of your scholarship application. In my opinion, in my experience, not just opinion, this takes the most preparation. If you don't get this right, you're not gonna get a scholarship. I can guarantee you. This is key. If you get this really right, if you're really smart about this, even if other parts of your scholarship, even if your TOEFL grade is not great enough, they will take you. This is really important to do this right. So it's crucial because this shows you beyond standardized test, a test you took that is computerized, beyond something written on paper that maybe somebody helped you to get it right. This shows who are you, why you are smart, what are your research questions, why you are the right person to do this. This is the entrance. It's a visa to enter any program. So you have to put a lot of thought. And most of the people that I've seen in my experience, and the first scholarship I applied to, I had the same problem. When I remember, I told you the first time I did not get the Fulbright, I got it the second time. It was because of this. This was good, but it was not good enough. I was not clear enough. I was not specific enough. And it's a very difficult thing to balance between being specific and also not being too specific. That's the balance you need to create. So make sure you have the right questions. You know what you want. You know what kind of research questions to study and why they're important. I talked a lot about this. It all falls under research or personal statement. How personal research and personal statements can be. Now, when they say personal statements, a lot of people make the mistake of saying, oh, I like running and going to the gym. That's not what they want. Oh, this is my favorite food. I love traveling. This is not enough. When they say personal, they mean not very personal, like, you know, me, like I love tabbouleh and hummus. Not that. They mean, as a person, why I'm really good for this research, what in my personal life. So for example, I lived war, and then I'm interested to study war, right? So that part of me can tell them that I'm a person who is passionate because I've been through some of that experience. You don't have to have experienced everything, but you have to show them how you are a good person to study this because you have this background or because something triggered you that is very interesting. Again, it doesn't have to be that I just gave you the example of war as an example, right? But you could say, for example, as a woman, I experienced that succeeding in the workplace in Egypt is difficult because this and this. As a woman, I'm Egyptian, I worked and I saw this. I'm giving you just an example. This is what they mean by personal. So I would like to study how can women succeed and work better and find strategies in Egyptian companies. I just made up this example. أنا ألفت المثال من بالي الآن يعني. But the idea is this is what they mean by personal, not something like, oh, I like full mdammas. No. And many people fall for that. So be careful and do that right. So it applies for both. Research statement is a little bit more research focused. Personal statement, you can mix between personal and research. Why me as a person is good for research. Research statement, you can actually cite some scholars. You say, I'm interested in this question. I want to add knowledge to what this thinker and this researcher and this professor have said. They've written about this, and I would like to come and study this further. And this is my question, right? So this sounds more like research statement. So the difference between the two is not very big, except in personal statement, you can be a bit more personal about why you are the person to study something. Be attentive to smallest details. I talked about this, so I won't bother you more, but font, if they say they want 12, don't make the font 10 so you can write more. Word count, I told you, make sure you stick to that. Formatting, if they want New Times Roman, follow that, and so on. Know your audience. Whatever you write, whatever you do, imagine that it's been read by the review committee, the scholarship, right? And so make sure that you're impressing them, you're showing them why you are the person. Be creative, concise, and clear. Have your own voice, your own way of saying something. Be على وزن خير الكلام ما قل ودل. Don't say too many, don't be too wordy. Don't say too many things. Find ways to be short, concise, but also saying what you want to say. Don't exaggerate or underestimate. لا تبالغ من نفسك، من قيمة نفسك ومعرفتك، ولا تقلل من قيمة ذاتك. الاثنين are dangerous. Don't do this or that. Know your value. Be very reasonable about why you are the right person, and also say they know you're entering PhD to learn something new because you need new skills. They know that. But if you make it like you are perfect already, then why should we get you into a scholarship or into a PhD program? Okay, so don't exaggerate and don't underestimate. Be very reasonable, very moderate in showing what you're good at and what you could really learn, and that's why you want to get into a PhD or a master's or any program. I'm using PhD masters as example, but it could be any program, by the way, just to be clear. So required tests, we've talked a little bit about this, but make sure to see what is the field of study requirements. Every field has their own. Some require the SAT, SAT, some require TOEFL and SAT, some don't require. The law schools have their own requirements. The GMAT, for those who want to study mathematics, have their own requirements. Most of them, not most, many of them will require English proficiency if you study Australia, United States, United Kingdom, Ireland, and so on. And even in some other universities, like in Germany, although those have their own requirements too. For example, they would want you maybe to study a year of German and so on and so forth. So you have to make sure. Preparation and timelines, we talked a lot about this. I think it's clear by now. And late submission, be very careful. Sometimes, I want to say something about late submission. It has happened to me. Sometimes you can't control it. Sometimes the scholarship wants you to take the test in a date that will not make it possible to reach to them by the time they want it, because the agency doing the test is out of your control. We need to know that. You can't control that sometimes. So what you can do, you can email the scholarship in advance and say, by the way, I took TOEFL, and just to let you know, they said the earliest they can get it to you is on this date. And most of the time it's okay. They will understand, but you need to let them know, because if you don't, they will just assume you didn't take it and it didn't arrive, and they will move on with the evaluation. Most of the time, if you tell them clearly that they should expect to get it from this because the agency told you, the testing agency, this is only the time they can do it. then that's okay. Make sure to communicate that. We spoke about communication, right? So make sure to do that. Letters of recommendation. I spoke a little bit about this, but ask early. Know people's commitments. People are busy. I won't keep you very long with the slide, but it's very clear. Be considerate. Professors are very busy. Your teachers, your mentors, your advisors. Make sure that you give them enough time so they can write you a good letter of recommendation. Because if you press me, even if I like you very much, you say, Lewis, I want it tomorrow, and I really like you. I don't want not to write you. But remember, I might write you not a very strong letter because I'm very busy. You give me very little time. So it is good for you to let them know early so they can take the time to write you a very good letter. Requests from people who know you academically and socially. There's a big mistake many people make. A professor taught me one class and I only participated once, and I'm asking them to write me a letter of recommendation. A professor who doesn't know me well and I actually don't like them, but they're famous, so I'm gonna ask them. You know what happens? They either don't write it or they write you a cold letter. يعني بالعربي يكتب لك رسالة فاترة. The scholarship committee know this. When they see a letter, they see clues that this is a lukewarm, فاترة. It's not great. So it's important to ask a professor, even if they're not famous, but they know you well. They taught you 2 classes. You took a good grade. They talked with you. They know what you're interested in. And maybe they know you socially. They know about your family, what you do. They know that you travel a lot. They know that you love writing poetry, for example. That professor or that person, anybody who's writing a letter, they will write you a much better letter that will really weigh heavy in the process of evaluating you than a famous one who writes you a 2-line, 2-paragraph, very lukewarm, risala fatira bila ma'na. So I want you to be very careful about this. This is a very important point about letters of recommendation. Choose references wisely. That's the last point, which connects to the previous point. Your resume is super important. You will need it. As far as I know, most scholarship applications will ask you to include a resume, CV or resume. So update your CV as soon as you can. Make sure it's updated and polished. Customize your CV. By customize, I mean, maybe your current version of the CV is good to apply for some tech jobs, for certain corporations. But if you apply for scholarship, you want to emphasize your education, your knowledge, your technical knowledge, not just, so that a corporation likes you. Make sure that an academic program will see your value. So it takes a little bit of tweaking. Simple example. Maybe when I apply for jobs, some people don't put education first. They put experience and then education. But if you apply for scholarships, put education first and then experience. They want to see right away, where did you study? What did you study? To see how you connect to what you're studying. And then, of course, everything is important, but make sure to arrange and customize. يعني فصل السي في بحيث تلائم الجو الأكاديمي أكثر إذا أنت مقدم على دراسة أكاديمية. That's what I mean, to be very clear. Ask for advice. Ask advice from people who know about CVs. I know a lot, so you can come to me if you need me in the program. But ask advice about, how to write a good CV, and send versions to people you trust and tell them that, how is this looking? What can I do? And do it and actually take the feedback. We have a course at Young Thinkers Program called Career Planning 301, How to Write Your CV. It's a free course. You can take it with our platform, and it can really help you know and learn a lot about CV writing. So take advantage of that. Interview skills are crucial because a lot of the scholarships will interview you. So be prepared. I know all of us are different. Some of you are shy. Some of you don't feel comfortable in front of a camera. Some of you feel very, very tense when you're in person. I understand. I really do. And it's very hard to change this very quickly. It takes a lot of training. But to be a good pianist, you need to play a lot of piano. To be a good singer, you need to train a lot with singing. To be a good writer, you need to write a lot, and a lot of bad writing will come first, right? They say that the writer's best friend is the trash bin. You write and throw in the trash. You write and throw until you write the right thing, right? My point, you need to practice. This is like anything else. A lot of practice can make you better. So know the interview process and the timeline from the beginning. Try to be careful about it and try to see your skills and improve them. Prepare and practice for virtual and in-person interviews. This is very clear. practice. Sometimes you can have another student, a friend of yours, say, can you pretend you are an interviewer and ask me questions? What they call mock interview. يعني نعمل مثل البروفا مع شخص بنعرفه، نقعد معه وبيسألنا أسئلة، نتصرف كأنه هي انترفيو حقيقية. So do practice like that. It really does help. Again, we have a course in the Young Thinkers Program called Career Planning 303, Interviews That Make You Stand Out. It's a course designed for interviews and interview skills. Take advantage of it. It can help you a lot. Online presence matters. Polish your online presence. By that, I mean, don't have all these social media profiles publicly posting things that might not be great, or sometimes embarrassing, or sometimes silly. It's hard for me to give this advice because part of me, I want you to be free to be who you are, but it's also true that many employers, and even maybe in some cases, some scholarships, might check your online and see, what is this person? Who are they? What are they doing? Are they who they are? There's something called a digital citizen, right? So I'm a real citizen in my city right now, but I have a digital presence, right? I have Facebook, I have this and that. So I'm also so they want to see, basically, they're not judging you just you're a bad person. They're looking, are you a good digital citizen? Is there a good connection between your citizenship as a person and a digital, who you say you are and what you're doing? So make sure that is polished and taken care of. It reflects good on you. Simple as that. I'm not telling you to remove something that's special to you or anything, but make sure anything you post, say that if my parents see this, I would be okay. I'll be proud. And basically, that's a very nice, simple rule. Anything I put to public, I say, will I be proud if my parents and the people I really love see this? If the answer is yes, yeah, I'll put it. If the answer is maybe not, then think a little bit more about that. Update your LinkedIn profile if you have one. If you don't have one, create one. It's really important because it's very professional. It can show your professional personality. When you do that, they might look at it and see what you have, your connections. It's a very good thing to have. Network, same idea we talked already about, but in this case, you can network with a lot of other people online that might have information, that might teach you, that might do something very simple that could change your whole process of getting scholarship. Maybe you network with somebody who's a career advisor or an expert in CV writing. You could send them your CV to look at it. Somebody who's a researcher, they could look at your personal statement, right? So networking can really help you in ways you cannot imagine. We have a YTP course, Young Thinkers Program, called Online Safety 201, Social Media Best Practices, Professional Profiles. This is a course that can teach you a lot about how to have a healthy, good, meaningful presence that can reflect well on you, but also teach you some things that are very important for online presence. So I think a lot of you know this. You probably are already very good with media and social media, but I wanted to just make sure you understand it in the context of scholarships. We're coming to close, and this is, I hope it's been a lot of information. I really understand. So if you have questions, I'm going to look at all your questions, and I'm going to give you time to ask other questions, I promise. But I hope that this has been, all this information has been all helping you think and triggering you to encouraging you to do all the best things you need to do to increase your chances of success. So let's close with these critical tips. These are very important, equally like everything else I've discussed. You cannot proofread enough. And I tell you, I'm a writer. I have 2 books and 35 articles, and I've written a lot in Arabic and English. And every time I surprise myself, a short piece, there's no mistake. But when a dear friend reads it, they see a little typo, a comma that doesn't need to be there, or this word is not grammatically correct, actually. And no matter how good I am, and no matter how many times I read, sometimes you don't see your own mistakes because you're so used to them. This is your way. Another set of eyes can really change. And proofreading is crucial. It shows a lot about you, how careful you are, how accurate and precise you are. So make sure to do that and ask others to help you in doing that. People you trust, people who have knowledge. Let me have some tea. My mouth is dry. Okay. Ask others to proofread the point I just made. I already made that point. Utilize campus resources. Those of you on campus, not all of you are, but those of you who are, you have make sure to know what access you have. For example, in many European American universities, we have career centers, CV writing help. We have writing centers where you can go and ask somebody to help with writing. Look at it, they teach you, they help you. And we have career and academic advisors. At Young Thinkers, I am an academic and career advisor. I'm a success coach. You could talk to me. We'll give you the email for those of you who want to stay in touch to ask questions. I can't do things for you, but you can ask me questions. I can guide you where to go, how to do something. The courses I just mentioned that we have can all help you, but utilize any resources you can to be prepared for the scholarship. And there are many resources, as you see so far. Send thank you note emails. I had an interview with the panel. I like them. I did my best. I'm done. I'll go home. If you have their email, I will send them. Thank you. It was a pleasure. I was so excited. Thank you so much. I will look forward to hearing about the next step. This makes a big difference. It shows you are very cordial and communicate well. If you don't have their emails, sometimes you have the email of the person who arranged the interview. You can write, can you please thank the committee on my behalf? I'm so grateful I met them, and I thank you for arranging all of this. It was a pleasure, and I will look forward to hearing. There's always a way where you can send a thank you note and be cordial. يعني اللباقة جميلة جدا. It can take you very far. Okay. This is a key one. I already spoke about my experience. If the first attempt fails, don't give up, try again. But when you try again, make sure you are more prepared in light of everything that we discussed so far. قلت لكم أنا the first time my Fulbright didn't work. I got to the interview, so I was good enough. But my questions needed more refining. They were too broad. And in the interview, I couldn't show them why these questions are important. How would I know them further? The second round, after a year of more preparation, I was much more prepared. I had clearer questions. I narrowed down the area. For example, I wanted to study literature. I wanted to focus on English literature. And it was very general. The second year, I focused on Victorian literature, which is الزمن الفكتوري في العصر في الأدب الإنجليزي. And I wanted to focus on how women dealt with certain issues and social pressures in that literature. I'm giving you example, and that helped me a lot. Now, by the way, one more thing to say. Once you get into a program, you don't have to stick with what you wanted to study. You can change, and it's totally okay. But when you enter for scholarship interview, you want to show them you're able to narrow questions. You're able to have good questions. And by the way, when I started my master's degree in literature, I did change my research because I read other things. I became more interested in other things. But by then I was able to know how to study. So try again, don't give up. But if you try again, prepare, know where you needed more improvement and work. You may be able to accept more than one scholarship. I discussed this already. You can have more than one, but make sure you know the requirements. Some will say you can only have our scholarship. You can't have another one. Some will say, if you take another one, let us know. We will cut the percentage according to what the other one gives you, right? There are different rules. Sometimes they don't care. You can have this and this, and that's also fine. Sometimes you can have one, like I did. I had two, but the timing were different, so there was no problem. I finished one and moved to the United States to the second one, from the UK to the US. So that's possible also, right? So make sure to know these details and do follow the rules, respect the rules, because you don't want to pay a price for that. And as promised, here we are, my friends, opening it up. Thank you so much. I was so pleased to be with you for your attendance and attention. I hope this was useful, and I hope it will add some value to your journey as you start planning. And I'm ready for questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Louis, for delivering such an informative session. We hope you liked it. We have now officially opened the floor for questions. So there's a Q&A feature on your screen. If you click that, you can ask your questions in Arabic or English, and then I will be reading them out to Louis. We do already have a few that have been asked, so we'll start answering those. But like I promised at the beginning of the session, we have a document with additional links and resources that will help you, find different scholarships. So I'm going to paste it in the chat. So please keep this link. It has Dr. Lewis worked so hard on trying to research the best opportunities available that, you guys can, benefit from. So let's start with the Q&A. So I had a lot of different questions come through my personal chat and through the Q&A asking about the TOEFL and the IELTS. So we have one user who said that, local universities don't need IELTS and TOEFLs despite them being in English, but in international universities, they are a requirement. And he thinks that these exams are barriers to scholarship. So any advice on that?
Yeah, of course, this is a good question, and I hope it applies to all of you who ask about IELTS, TOEFL, and other tests. If you make a list of where you want to apply, and of course, if the university that doesn't need it, then that's good, fine. But if there are programs you want to study at, let's say in the US or Ireland, I've had students apply to medical school in Ireland. Talk to me, by the way. Make sure you know those requirements and get the test on time. Now, if the test is required, you do need to prepare and get ready. But I will tell you a small secret. There are two things happening now. A lot more and more universities are no longer requiring TOEFL and IELTS because they want to show other ways to prove your proficiency, because they know sometimes people, they don't always reflect 100% people's ability in English. Sometimes you can ace the test, but that doesn't mean you're good in writing academically and speaking a really good English. So, some universities are removing it as a requirement and they're testing you on their own. You go there, the university has its own test. This is happening. So I'm saying this advice not to say, oh, this is good news, we don't need it, goodbye. It means you really honestly have to be good in English, in writing, reading, and speaking, so you can succeed. Honestly, you will not succeed, even if you make it and go through the process and get to your program. If your English is not good enough, you're going to suffer. So it's for your benefit to be good at that. Number two, because I talked a lot about personal and research statement, universities are realizing more and more that IELTS and TOEFL is not enough as a measure. And so sometimes if you're an international student and you are lower than what they want, so if they say they want at least 90 in TOEFL, for example, sometimes if you get 86, but they see every part of your application, your CV, your statement is really good, they will take you, because they will take into account that you're an international student, you never spoke English your life and you learned it, and yet you got 86, which is really good. I'm giving you this as an example. So now, instead of saying, oh, I will cut you because you don't have 95, because that's what I require in TOEFL, instead of cutting you, they're looking at the holistic application and measuring you as a whole package. Okay, that's good news for you, all of you. It means you have to really pay attention to all the package, especially, as I said, research and personal statement, right? So that's another thing. But if it is required, you got to get ready for it. And there are a lot of centers that teach IELTS and TOEFL, even in the, in the Arab region. Of course, there are testing centers would have materials. I know they exist in most Arab countries, IELTS and TOEFL. So I hope this answered the question, Amal.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much. So let's move on to the next question. So we have from Abdulrahman. Right now, I am pursuing a non-thesis master's degree, and he would very much like to go for a PhD. So he's asking whether he has choices in pursuing a PhD if his master's is non-thesis.
Yes, that's a very good question. I think it depends on the PhD program. Bear in mind a couple things. The first thing is that many people go directly from bachelor's to PhD in some countries, like the US. Here, you can finish your bachelor's and get into a PhD. Within the PhD, you will have a master's and then get the PhD. So it's all one package. That happens. So that means you don't have to have, you would have a bachelor's thesis very often to do that, right? But in this case, I don't want to give you wrong information. It will depend on the program and their requirements. So the best thing I can tell you is look at the universities and programs you are interested in for your PhD and send them a message and tell them, this is my situation. Will I be a good candidate, or will this, be against me, basically? Write them in a very nice way and tell them that, and see what their answer is. They might tell you no. A PhD student comes, they go through the master's first, and then that master's leads to a PhD. In my PhD, I took the master's on the way to the PhD, by the way. So one of my master's degrees comes within the PhD. After finishing certain requirements, I got the master's. I could have left the program, but if you continue and finish other requirements, you get a PhD. And of course, I wrote a dissertation. But you need to ask to be clear, because any information I give you will be general. It might not help you. It might hurt you. So talk to the programs. That's why I repeat to all of you the idea that it's specific to identify what you want and where, because that helps you asking the right questions to the right people. Because I can tell you all kinds of general stories, they may not help you. So I hope that helps you, Abdurrahman.
Alrighty, thank you again. Moving on to the next question. So actually we received a lot of different questions about having the slide decks and the recording of the webinar. Yes, by the end of this session, hopefully by tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, we will all send an email out to everyone with the session recording as well as the additional resources we shared before. So hopefully that answers your question. So Dr. Lewis, Alia was asking, how many letters of recommendation do we need?
Usually between 2 and 3 letters of recommendations are requested for scholarships. I would prepare to have 3 people, identify them and have them ready. So, and if you apply to more than one scholarship, one of them might want 2, the other might want 3, so it's good to have 3. So identify the people and tell them in advance, I'm thinking about scholarship. I really value you. You're important to me. You've taught me. And I would love for you to write me a recommendation. And this is what I want to do. The more you tell them details, the more they can write you a letter that is detailed, that can help you succeed and get the scholarship. So 2 and 3 would be the average.
Yeah, and I think it depends a lot on the program. So if you do your research, let's say in a specific field, they kind of do tell you, where you need to get those recommendation letters. Maybe they're academic references or personal references, or even maybe professional references. So I think also your research is key to planning that out. So thank you again, Lewis. Let's move to Wiam. How specific do I really have to be in my personal letter? Can you elaborate more?
As I said, and this is a great question, not too specific because you could hurt yourself. You don't want to trap yourself, but also not too broad. So for example, I'll give you my example, right? To show you. At the first time when I didn't get the Fulbright, I wanted English literature to study the period, but I didn't have clear questions and what in the period. If I study the Victorian, Al-Asr al-Victori, there's a million things about it, a million topics. So that one wasn't enough. But then the second time I focused on how women wrote and tried to advance their cause in the Victorian age. But again, you see that is not too specific, but it's enough for a scholarship to say, I'm talking about women writers, how they wrote, how they thought and resisted. But still, then I could read these women and maybe focus on one question. For example, how women wrote about labor conditions. See, I'm getting more specific. Do you see? Victorian age, women writers, how women wrote about causes, and then how women wrote about labor conditions. And we're getting more and more and more specific. You don't want to go too specific, but enough to show you have a very interesting direction, if that makes sense. I hope it helps, but this applies to engineering, biology, anything, right? Mm-hmm. Good question, right. Very good question. Thank you.
Very good indeed. Yeah, and it's based on our presentation. So exciting to see that engagement. So we actually have a lot of questions asking about Al-Ghurair and whether they still offer scholarships for a master's degree or any other educational scholarships. At this point of time, unfortunately, they don't have scholarships open, but do follow their social media pages, Al-Ghurair Foundation on Instagram. Any opportunity for scholarships, they usually post there. So hopefully that answers your question. Dr. Lewis, another question for you. Is there an age limit for scholarships?
Some do and some don't. It depends. But especially, so that's another thing. When I tell you pay attention to the details of the scholarship, there are scholarships for different populations that could include age sometimes. But sometimes the scholarship will tell you between the ages of 22 and 35, for example. So pay attention to that. But for PhD programs, as far as I know, in Europe and the US, North America, most of the time there's no limit. You could get into a PhD and get fully funded even if you are 50 years old. It doesn't matter. But as long as you have the right questions and you know what you're doing and you have a really good research project. So I would not, let you be discouraged about the age part, as long as you have all the other components in place, especially for the very high level. I mean, for bachelor's and master's, there might be requirements. I recommend that you look at them carefully for sure.
All right, thank you so much. So our next question is, I am not so good with the English writing. So how can I develop my English writing skills, right? Well, you're kind of in luck.
Just to be clear, the link you sent, Amal, has the advising email, right? For them to stay in touch with me. Great.
Yes, it has the advising email, and we'll share it again in the chat.
Yeah. So this was not good in writing and would like to improve in writing?
Yeah. So what do I do if my English, writing in English isn't good?
Yeah. A lot of people have very good speaking skills, but not good writing skills. And sometimes they have good listening skills for conversation, but maybe not good listening skills for academic talk. There's different language, like a different jargon. So going to writing, the only way you can really excel at writing is actually to write and to read a lot. Reading can really help writing, reading in English, and not only in English, in the topic that you're interested in. So if I want to be a good writer in literature, I benefited a lot from reading literary books, novels and poetry. It helped me to see how writing works, right? But that aside, to give you a little bit more basic advice, all of you could apply to help all of you, whatever you want to study, by the way. I think there are some different levels of composition books in English, and they could really help you. I recommend the Cambridge series. There's the Cambridge series of writing in English that is really good, that you can check it out, but also others. Anything you could access online, it could be really helpful for you. So do that.
Great, thank you. Also, I want to mention that, Louis, if you can just navigate to the next slide, you can see our program URL, the website. If you register for free on the Young Thinkers Program, so there's the website, you create an account, we have a free English composition course from Arizona State University. It's completely free and it helps you develop your English writing skills. So this is a course that Arizona State University teaches for their students, and we're offering it for free. So I'm going to actually paste the link in the chat so you guys can access, but you guys must create a free account. And you'll see also on the Young Thinkers Program that we have 30 courses dedicated to helping you develop professional skills that you're going to need when you transition into university and the world of work. So please make use of this resource. It's completely for free. And also within the program, we have channels, resource channels. In the announcements channels, we post a lot of different scholarship opportunities. So we recently had one with the American University in Dubai with their media department. We have ones in Egypt and abroad. So please make sure you're continuously checking that channel so you don't miss an opportunity.
And I have two quick questions that I can answer in front of me here. Can you get a scholarship if you don't have really high grades? This comes a lot. I've heard this question a lot. It's a good one. It depends on how low your grades are. Number one. So I'll be super honest. I don't want to give you false hope. يعني أمل زائف. If they are really low, barely passing, it will be challenging or maybe not very hard. But if they are lower than you want them to be, or than what the scholarship is asking, sometimes the scholarship will ask for معدل, that is 70 and above. Example, أنا بعطيكم مثال من البال يعني. So, in this case, you can compensate for lower grade. Let's say they want 80 and you have 75 or 72. You can compensate, as I've been trying to really tell you throughout the whole webinar, this is key, by being strong in all the other parts. Having strong personal research statement, having strong standardized test, do really good in the interview when you get invited. If you compensate all these areas, then the lower grades, fairly lower than what they want, could definitely be okay. you could definitely do a good job. So it is possible, but I will be, again, really honest, depending on how low the grades are. And that you will have to decide. And then the other question, is it okay to be 1 year late for college? I think that's totally fine. People have circumstances, all kinds of things happen. It does not affect how that works. So you'll be fine if you have a strong application. And the point here was in this webinar to teach you to have a very strong application so that these little things will not be a problem at all. Other questions you have here?
So I think we have time for maybe just 2 questions. So let's ask the last 2. So how can an international student overcome the preference of national students over them when it comes to funding? So I think that's a very good question.
Yeah. Before I answer that question, I have something in my head I want to share with all of you because I know it's important for all of you as well. Many people that I've worked with in the scholarship capacity on advising, they say they really want to get undergraduate funding. And we talked a lot about the graduate funding also. But to be honest with you, undergraduate funding for bachelor's degree is not impossible, but it's much harder for a lot of reasons. It's not easy to get funding for undergraduate, but it's not impossible. So that takes a bit more work, a bit more preparation and looking and finding certain programs. But I want to say it's not impossible, but it's a bit harder. For master's and PhD, it's fairly easier to find because easier not to get, to find, to apply to, but you have to search because there's more availability for that. Going back to the question, the preference given to national versus international, I mean, that in every country, there's a little bit of that. Like here in the US, for example, sometimes for people we call them in-state. So it's University of Ohio, for example, they will have less tuition from somebody living in Ohio than someone coming from California, right? So there's all that preference in payment and all kinds of things. So the best way to go through it, honestly, is to look for scholarships tailored for international students. Those scholarships tend not to do the preference thing because they are designed for international students. So that's another point of to be strategic to apply to scholarships that fit you. Remember, I started talking about that at the beginning of the webinar because these kind of things come up, including this very good question. So look for scholarships that work for you. And, for example, in the Arab world, like I know, as an example, Emirat, they have a specific government scholarship for Arab students. So that means Arab students apply, and they have specific programs for Emiratis and so on and so forth. And that applies to many other countries. So look for the right source for you to avoid any kind of, unnecessary sort of like, let's call it, being not getting the best deal or something. Yeah.
All right, so let's take the last question before we call it a day. By the way, you guys have all excellent questions, but because of the time restraint, unfortunately, we can't answer them all. I did share Lewis's email in the chat, advising@youngthinker.org. So if you send your email, Dr. Lewis will do his best within the coming days to answer them.
Yeah, advising email, advising@youngthinker.org. If you send emails there, I will try to respond to you as much as I can, including the ones we didn't get today. So we will not ignore any questions. I care a lot about your questions, and I'm so happy you're asking these wonderful questions.
Yeah, very good. And also, again, we keep on getting questions about the recording. Yes, you will receive the recording within the next 2 days. So last question for the day. It's in Arabic. هل أن يكون الوضع المادي غير جيد هو شرط للحصول على منحة؟
لا، ليس شرط. أنا ذكرته كمثال في منح مخصصة لذوي الدخل المحدود أو للناس اللي دخلهم يعني بمستوى معين. هذه المنح، القصد من كلامي أعطيته كمثال إنه ممكن لبعض منا هنا الموجودين منا ممكن تفيدوا. طبعا المنحة فقط لأنها لذوي الدخل المحدود، ولنفرض جدلا أنا دخلي محدود، هذا لا يعني إنه راح أنا أوتوماتيكيا أتلقى المنحة. لازم أقدم باكج اللي حكينا كله فيه، استمارة تكون قوية وتكون جيدة حتى تزيد فرصي في الحصول على المنحة. هو مش شرط، لكن في منح مخصصة، في منح كثيرة لذوي الدخل المحدود في العالم العربي، في العالم بالمناسبة، حتى في أمريكا الشمالية. منح للناس اللي يعني مرات يسموهم الناس اللي الاندر سيرف، اندر ريبريزنتد، اللي ما عندهم تمثيل كافي في الجامعات. في منح كثيرة للأقليات مرات. أنا أعطيتها كمثال. في منح للمتفوقين، في منح للي حصلوا على كذا معدل في السنة الثانية في الهندسة، ستعطى لهم منحة معدل يعني نمبر فما فوق، ممكن ياخذوا منحة يدرسوا ماجستير. العفو. في منح كثيرة أنا أعطيتها كأمثلة حتى أخلي في بالكم أنه ممكن منح معينة تنطبق عليكم، استفادوا منها. طبعا تحت شرط أنه الاستمارة ككل قوية اللي حكينا كله فيه. So I hope that answers. أشكركم من كل قلبي جميعا على هذه الجلسة الحلوة. أنا فعلا تمتعت بوجودي معكم، أتمنى نعملها من جديد. I will really hope to do it one day, whether English or Arabic. So we thank you for your feedback. إذا كان عندكم feedback أعطونا إياه. وشكرا جزيلا. I wish you all the very very best from my heart. وإن شاء الله we will stay in touch. وأتمنى لكم كل الموفقية. هي رحلة جميلة جدا بس مش سهلة، وإن شاء الله استفادتوا من اللي حكينا اليوم يا رب. أتمنى لكم كل الموفقية.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you once again, Dr. Lewis, for presenting your amazing ideas to us. In the chat, I've left a little link. If you guys can kindly share your feedback with us, this will help us in future webinars. And do follow us on social media at Ghurair Foundation. And